Greetings, I'm Christopher Logan Hill, the G.I. Joe Gamer, and today on Joe Takes number 22, we're talking about Stalker from the Hilt. Now, normally I have the original vintage from the first figure of the line, but for Stalker I never had that one. I have some really cool stand-ins, but it's not the same thing. I do, however, have the 1989 version of Stalker, which was really cool. And I was going to break out his kayak, but I decided against it. I mean, this particular version of Stalker is really cool. I love the little face mask. It's interesting that it came with it. Now, full disclosure, these are not Stalker's original arms. These are the 1986 Roadblock arms. My Stalker's arms, I played with this figure so much, I broke the thumbs off, and I think I even cracked one of the arms. And so I took my 86 Roadblock because I have like 3 Roadblocks. I had two of the originals and the Tiger Force one, and I used my 86 Roadblock to fix up my 89 Stalker because it was the only Stalker I had at the time. And a couple of years later, they came out with this Stalker. Let's see if we can get the gun out of his face. Now, this Stalker came with a big old backpack that was actually screwed to the back. That's why it's all flat right there. I don't know if you really can see that, but you had to unscrew it in order to repair this figure, and I've had to repair it a couple of times over the years. This became my go-to Stalker. I mean, it's not the original green camo Stalker with the green beret. He has the black beret, which signifies special forces, of course. But there's lots of different berets that signify different things. The red beret signifies that you're an airborne ranger, but like Beachhead has. I was gonna do a modern figure stand-in, but I figured I might as well just look at my carded figures because I've got 2 of those to look at. Now, this was a really good version of Stalker. I really liked it, and it has the messed up file card that is in 5 languages and about a sentence and a half maybe for his file and his bio. But I have to say, this figure is, for me, up to the classified point, this was the best figure of Stalker they ever made, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I actually have 2. I do have the 25th anniversary one, but apparently I grabbed my backup Stalker, so not going to be in this video, unfortunately, but that's okay. Maybe another day I'll look at a bunch of my vintage ones, but we do have number 46 Stalker in the line. He's in the classified version. I like this box art, but I think they could have done a better job with his face. To me, for some reason, they made him look, I don't know, like his head was stretched out like some kind of, and maybe if I angle it the way I see it sometimes, you can see it too, where his head just kind of looks like a bean. Oh, sorry. I don't know what else to call it, but I got a little moth in there. I'm going to have to deal with that. Well, of course I do. But that takes us to the classified figure himself, and I forgot to look up the name of this scarf. It starts with a B, but no big deal. It's the standard desert scarf that they use. And I am going to take it off because Stalker looks a lot better without it, I think. Now, he has the sheath for his pulverizer, which we'll take a look at in a minute. I like his pulverizer. It's his original gun. Now, let me see if I can get this off without taking his head off. Because you can get it on without taking his head off, but it doesn't look like you can take it off without doing the same. But let me try. Oh, I managed. I popped it off. And actually, this looks better on Breaker, but maybe that's just my opinion. Now, Stalker is one of those figures that actually looks good with or without the hat. He's got a really cool haircut. He's got a scar right there on the side of his head, which, Stalker has seen a lot of battles, so naturally. Now, he came with this big old heavy machine gun with this nice box clip, or magazine, I'm sorry. And then he came with his pulverizer, which has the removable magazine that matches his original 1982-83 version that they also gave to Duke, the Tiger Force Duke. Really cool gun. I like his pistol, and he comes with a silencer too. And then he comes with a big old knife. Now, the original Stalker also came with a knife on his web gear, his tactical gear, whatever you want to call it. Let's get his beret back on him, because that's the way Stalker's supposed to look, with the nice green beret, even though he's not a green beret. But yeah, I prefer the look on Stalker. You know what? Maybe Stalker is a green beret. I know he's an Army Ranger. That's his MOS, but military occupational specialty. And I really like this figure. He's my top 10 Joes. He's my number 10. Always was one of my favorite field leaders. I think only second to Flint. And Flint's an officer, but this is definitely my favorite NCO. Favorite leader NCO. I mean, I think I like Beachhead a little better. Well, I definitely like Beachhead better as a character, but Stalker, as a leader, this is your man right here. Now, a lot of times they will forget that Stalker is not just a medic. He's a ranger, but he's also an interpreter and a medic. And they often forget that. There's been a lot of instances where he could have patched his buddies up, even in the comics. I don't know if it's just an oversight. Never in the cartoon did they ever have him act in the role as a medic, but that is definitely his secondary specialty, is medic interpreter. So, and I know he speaks a lot of different languages. So, well, that takes us to the Sunbow cartoon, and this week I watched Menace of the Mass Device, which he was prominently featured in. My favorite scene in that, and probably my favorite scene with Stalker, is when he was explaining to Cobra that G.I. Joe was standing down and they were cooperating, and he had this big scene behind him where the troops were marching and the tanks were moving and the helicopters were flying in, and he's just in the middle of his spill still, and Gung Ho shows up and picks up one of the tanks, and he's telling him to get out of the shot. What are you doing? And then they come in and tell him, oh, the Cobra's not picking up the broadcast anymore, so you're all good, Stalker. So it was really funny. And they actually kind of put the action figures into the movie. It was pretty cool. It was turned into the 5-part miniseries originally, and then they made it into a movie. And on my copy of the DVD, actually I have two, but on the one that comes with the big footlocker, you can actually watch it as a movie instead of in 5 parts, which is kind of cool. You can do that with Revenge of Cobra and Pyramid of Darkness. And all the 2-part episodes on that you can also watch as without the middle parts. Now that works with all of them except for the Traitor, because the Traitor has this intro at the beginning of the 2nd episode with Hector Ramirez, and for some reason when they put the 2 episodes together they skip that part, because that's the recap, really. Now the other ones I watched 3 episodes with Stalker. He's not in the series a lot. The first one I watched was Countdown for Zartan, which he was definitely on the squad for that. Lady J was the team leader. There was a scene at the end of that where him and Zartan have a confrontation, and it's pretty cool. He also makes fun of Gung Ho's Gumbo. Let me see. After that, I watched Mind Menace. If I remember the name of that one, it was the one where they were experimenting with mental powers. And they went to Easter Island, and the Cobras had taken over the whole island, and they had turned some of the Moai into, they had lasers coming out of their eyes, and they had modified them in some way. And then they had one of these psychics, actually, telekinetics, Airborne's brother, as a matter of fact, ripped the Moai out of the ground, and they came out as full statues and attacked Airborne and Flash. It was pretty cool. Uh, but Stalker was in the end of that when Duke and Airborne formed a squad to go after Cobra on their Himalayan base on K-10, and Stalker wasn't very prominent in that one, but it was cool. Him and Flash had this scene with an out of body traveler. It was kind of cool. It was nice that him and Flash got to work together in the cartoon as well, being two of the original Joes. And then the other one I watched was Battle for the Train of Gold, and when Stalker and when Duke, Snake Eyes, and Scarlet were captured by Cobra, he kind of took over him and Gung Ho. It was kind of neat to see him in that role in the cartoon. It wasn't a big role, but it was nice to see him in that capacity again. Like he was in Menace of the Mass Device, because him and Scarlet took over in that too. The cover I chose is number 39, and I am going to put on my glasses here for a second because I'm going to take a look at the last page, because Stalker has a really good line in that, and I wanted to read it and show you. But I wanted to give you a close-up look at the comic without the bag too, because that's just such a cool cover with him and Gung Ho just hiding in the jungle. It's really cool. What's funny is Gung Ho's not in this one. It's Stalker, Ripcord, Roadblock, and Recondo. They meet up with Recondo. Now that might have been supposed to have been Roadblock, but the way they colored that's definitely the cover appearance is supposed to be Gung Ho. Oh, I am wrong. Gung Ho's in that too. That's right. Stalker liked to have Gung Ho on missions with him. And the line I wanted to have here to read and show you was right on the last page of the comic, where they had rescued Dr. Adele Burkhart again, like they did in the first issue. She had gotten captured, but she's an activist, and she puts herself in those situations sometimes. She's really trying to do good. She's actually a really interesting character throughout the series. But Ripcord was kind of chewing her out, and she was feeling really bad because people had gotten killed. And Stalker has his line on the last page here, right? Well, there's one more page after, but this is really the last bit here. And he says to Ripcord, he says, "At ease, troop. Nobody asked you to sign up for this duty. You did what you thought was right. Get this through your head. We're not fighting to have everybody think the way we do. We're fighting so that people can have the right to think the way they want, even if they don't agree with us." I really, really like that line, and it stuck with me over the years, and I completely agree with that statement. So, Stalker, man. Throughout the series, he was the go-to field commander for G.I. Joe. He led, I'm pretty sure he's led more missions than any other G.I. Joe field leader. Right from the get-go, him and Hawk he was Hawk's senior NCO there at the beginning. And whenever a mission came up, issue 2, he led that mission. In the one with Quinn, Snake Eyes, Breaker, and Gung Ho that I was looking at, and I think the last Joe Takes, he was the leader of that too. It might have been on my G.I. Joe and Me that I did a couple nights ago. But anyway, I picked out this cover because I really enjoyed it. And I think Stalker is probably one of the most intense characters. And over the years, they revealed that a lot about his background. And I don't remember whether it's in this series or the IDW series, but he ended up. There was a gal in the special missions that he met that he ended up marrying, and he became a stepfather to her son. And then they had a son together, right? Or a daughter, I don't remember which, but. So Stalker ended up having a life outside of G.I. Joe too, and that was pretty cool. And of course, he was in Vietnam with Snake Eyes and Stalker. So the three of them, they went way back, and there were actually some missions where Stalker and Storm Shadow were working together. In fact, there was a storyline that Larry Hama wrote where they were fugitives of the U.S. government together. That was kind of neat. And then Storm Shadow got stabbed, and Stalker and Scarlet, well, Scarlet stabbed him, but she realized she was in the wrong, and then they had to save Storm Shadow. It was kind of cool. But, long history of G.I. Joe with for Stalker in the comics. I know Larry Hama saw him as his go-to field leader, and as far as I'm concerned, he's for my head canon and my storylines that I do, he is the fire team alpha leader, and so he's basically my number one squad leader. So, well, platoon sergeant. Then he has a couple squad leaders that are in two squads in each platoon. That's kind of how I do things. And as far as I'm concerned, I know they started him as a sergeant, and then they skipped staff sergeant for some reason, because I know they promoted him in the comics in issue right after Duke showed up, and then they announced that Duke was going to be the field leader. General Austin gave them all promotions. So Stalker had become a staff sergeant at that point. But later on, started with the Tundra Ranger, he was E7, which is a sergeant first class. Now, in my headcanon, he's a command sergeant major, just like Beachhead. The two of them are the go-to platoon sergeants for Duke, Flint and Hawk, who that's the hierarchy of G.I. Joe, really. Now, I know a lot of people may see it differently, but that's how I do it. As a character, I really see Stalker as important to the overall story. So much that he actually brought Snake Eyes into G.I. Joe. He helped Hawk recruit him, and so during the origins story, they had all been tied in together in some manner. Hawk, Stalker, and Snake Eyes. It was kind of cool. Now, there is Larry Hama did write a G.I. Joe Origins, I think is what he called it, for IDW, where he did like a pre-issue to number one, and they did a 3-part limited series of it, and it was really cool in that they did a lot of stuff with all the Joes, and he had recruited Stalker because Stalker had stabbed himself through the hand to intimidate somebody into talking. And that was all it took to endear him to Hawk at the time, when Hawk was a colonel. And Hawk chose him to come onto the team, the Joe team, when he was assembling G.I. Joe. So it was pretty cool that Larry Hama went back and told some of those stories. And I haven't talked much about the IDW series, but I have enjoyed it, and I do have quite a few of them. I didn't get to those in G.I. Joe and Me, but next month I'm probably going to do a G.I. Joe and Me too, and I'm going to get into those issues of G.I. Joe from the IDW series. I guess that is my take on Stalker. I mean, he's my fire team alpha leader, and one of my go-to characters. Definitely in my top 10 favorite Joes. And I guess with that all being said, Logan out.